Colonel William D. Bailey. He's the Director of Operations at Arnold Engineering Development Center, Arnold Air Force Base, Tennessee. He manages development testing at the world's largest and most advanced complex of flight simulation test facilities in the world, valued at over $11 billion in assets. Colonel Bailey entered the Air Force in January of 1989 as a graduate of the University of Notre Dame in the Distinguished Graduate Air Force ROTC Detachment 225, Notre Dame, Indiana. He began his career as an avionics engineer and later chief engineer in the Medium Launch Vehicle Systems Program office at Los Angeles Air Force Base. Following graduation of U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School, Colonel Bailey served as a flight test engineer in the 416th Flight Test Squadron at Edwards Air Force Base, California. His assignments in flight test included flight commander, chief engineer, operations officer, and squadron commander. Upon completing Air Command and Staff College, Colonel Bailey was assigned to the newly created Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office as the division chief. Colonel Bailey has logged over 550 hours in the T-38, the F-14, F-15, F-16, F-18 Tornado, and other military and civilian experimental aircraft. He's married to the former Tana Talbot of Lancaster, California, and he has 2 children, Will and Katie. Please give a warm welcome to Colonel Bailey. Thank you for being here.
All right. Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. Does this start? Okay, it starts working. All right. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I guess we're into that whole group participation thing. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Hey, look, I'm military, right? You got to go with me on that one. Okay. Hey, this morning I'd like to introduce to you which has got to be the longest title of any briefing that I have ever given. I think I'm up to about 9 words there, 10 if you'd give me credit for zipper-suited being hyphenated. All right, but it is certainly a daunting proposition to stand in front of you and represent the entire operational community to you maintainers. But fortunately, I have a tremendous ego that will see me through this. Okay, all right. Now, I use the term zipper-suited sun god in the title. Now, you may have read a little bit about it. Now, it's a kind of a friendly jab between the operators and the maintainers there as to play on part of the tremendous ego that I just mentioned. But I don't know if you can really blame us for it. I mean, take a look at it, right? Dashing men, suave and debonair, climbing into their steeds, soaring faster than the speed of sound, spouting flames, all kinds of good stuff. We can lay it on pretty thick. However, though, there is another minority opinion that there is a group that may view us as just a group of overgrown frat boys, maybe too obsessed with self-gratification and pull-my-finger jokes to ever sit down and do paperwork or go to a meeting or explain ourselves or do anything that doesn't involve beer. Okay, so zipper-suited sun god, you guys are all checked out on. Okay. All right, now what's my background? Now, you guys had a pretty lengthy explanation of my career there. I've been in the Air Force for 23 years, so I am now seriously considering making this a career. Okay. Now, most of my time has been in developmental flight tests. Okay, they listed off a bunch of aircraft that I'd flown, but I had worked in areas doing envelope expansion tests, first flight of aircraft, performance testing, radar testing, and this is all in the development arena. It's the area in which we haven't yet written the book on a lot of the stuff that we're building. Okay, so the manuals, etc., are very immature, just by the nature of the business. Okay, now talking about myself is one of my favorite hobbies, but I've been told that I should stick to the topic. Okay, taking a look, we talked a little bit about Arnold Engineering Development Center. Okay, it is the country's largest ground test complex. And you can see here just examples of the different test capabilities that we have there. We have wind tunnels where we can operate at subsonic, transonic, hypersonic speeds there. Take a look, we have engine test cells where we can test turbine engines or rocket engines. We also have space chambers where we can pump them down to the kind of vacuum and the kind of temperatures you would see in deep space. Now, I'd worked mostly in developmental flight tests, and this was going to be my first assignment in ground test. I really didn't have very much contact with that community, and I was tremendously humbled because I had spent a lot of time around turbine engines, certainly, and I had a pretty good handle on what it took to maintain one. Now, what I didn't have a good handle on is if you take a look down here in that lower left-hand corner there, the absolute city block of infrastructure that it takes in order to test that engine, and then the degree of maintenance and oversight required in order to keep something like that running. That's a lot of energy, a lot of air blowing, a lot of electricity getting chewed up. And that's a significant undertaking. And like I said, it was an area that was a pretty big blind spot for me as an engineer. Okay, so let's get to the key theme for today, right? Which is, hey, look, how do I view the role of reliability and maintenance as an operator? Okay, now my perspective is going to be shaped by what I was working on and who I was working with. And then most importantly, the kind of stuff that happened that could fill up a Dilbert cartoon. So I'm going to use some of these colorful examples from the past in order to make my point. And I promise to you, I certify that there is at least 10% real truth in all stories that I'm about to give you. Okay, so let's start off with this one. Okay. Let me talk about one of the classic pitfalls in the interaction between maintenance and operations. Okay, now it's who works for who, right? You can spend a lot of time on this topic. Now obviously, his real name wasn't Skippy, okay? I don't want to give you that impression. But who he was the technical director for the center, which meant he was the senior ranking civilian, and he was the final word on all things having to do with test. And one of his favorite hobbies was to go around and pin down the new guys and ask them that question. Do you know who you work for? And now what he meant out of that was you don't work for him, you don't work for the program manager, you don't work for the wing commander, you don't work for headquarters. What he meant was he wanted to let you know that you worked for the 150-hour pilot, okay, who is just barely qualified in the aircraft, just learning it for the first time, and now he's being asked to go to war in it, okay? Now, the important part for that is, I mean, it took a while for us to get our brain around that concept. Maintenance doesn't work for ops. Ops doesn't work for maintenance. What we're talking about here is we were all working for a guy that we would never meet. Okay, now, why is that 150-hour pilot kind of an important reference point? So let me talk to you for a minute about the impact of stress and the importance of reliability. Okay. All right. This is how we envision ourselves going into combat. Fangs out, nothing but pure carnivore, aggression, a total nightmare. That's what we want. Now, occasionally, it doesn't happen to me, but I've heard that sometimes things start coming at you pretty fast. Didn't look like it did in training. You can't seem to get that thing to reset, and I'm looking around for a Control-Alt-Delete button somewhere in this cockpit. And that's how we end up feeling. So we're barely hanging in there. Okay, so for us, the 150-hour pilot was the standard. When we were going to field something, we had to know absolutely that it was going to work. It was going to work the first time. It was going to work every time, and it was going to work the way we said it would. So that's who we were working for. The only variable in this whole equation that guy should have to worry about is the enemy. Let me use another example to make that point. Okay, now what we have here is the display for a radar warning receiver. Okay, now what's a radar warning receiver do? Hey, look, it's not very imaginative. It warns you where the radars are. So what we're seeing here, it'll tell you kind of the type of radar that's looking for you. Okay, so you can see that 6 up there. Okay, I'll tell you it's a SA-6, for example, surface-to-air missile. It'll tell you roughly where it is. Okay, so you can start looking for the smoke trail. Now, on this test program, we took to calling it the goldfish because somebody had heard that a goldfish has about an 8-second memory, right? And this thing had about an 8-second memory. It would see the radar, it would report the radar, and then a couple of seconds later, it would see the radar and report it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until it filled up the whole screen with nothing but radar after radar. Now, we had gone back and forth with the company on this one. They had sent us updates and patches. It was not seeming to solve the problem. Now we're kind of getting into with those guys. They're getting their management involved. So we decided, hey, look, I'm going to take a little camera, put it over the pilot's shoulder, and we're going to film that display. Now, the one thing I didn't count on was the fact that the angle of the camera gave you a pretty good mirror reflection of the pilot. So we get done, pull the tape off the aircraft, walk back to the debrief. Now we've got the company management there sitting there with us, and I hit play. And again, up comes the radar, and another radar, and another radar, and another radar. And my buddy Starman, who had done most of this flying, had about had it. And the way I knew that was I got to see Starman drop his mask and then proceed. Hey, look, I'm not good at lip reading, but apparently this is something longshoremen like to say and express his unfettered view of this. He gestured a little bit, and you could see it all clear as day in the display. And again, we're sitting there at a table, and I didn't know what to do at that point. But the point there was, hey, look, we were failing the boss. Right? Imagine if that was you. You're barely qualified in this aircraft. You don't know if you're going up against one threat or 10, right? And we can't have that, right? That's how, like I said, the impact of stress, we just cannot have that kind of stuff in there. And that's my point. That's my point of reference on that one. Okay. Okay. So for those of you who maybe were out late last night or maybe struggling with the coffee this morning, let me spell it out to you. The alternative is mutual professional disrespect. All right, now what we're looking at up there is the Hatfields and the McCoys. Okay? Now, I'm not going to tell you that respect isn't something that has to be earned. I think everybody knows that. You have to earn it. But let's move beyond that for a minute. Okay, everybody's clear on that one. Let's move beyond that one. Let's talk about the importance of that mutual aspect of respect. Okay, the mutual aspect of that, it really has a key principle to it, and that's an understanding and an appreciation for that other team's burden, their challenges. What do they go through? Now, what do I mean by that? I had a test program in the F-16s, and I was in a bit of a corner. I needed to move very quickly, but I needed to keep changing the equipment on the jet over and over and over again. And that isn't easy to do. And I was worried because that's a key part. If we don't get the gear right on the jet, either I can't run the test or I'll run the test and it'll be no good. So, under the theory that there ain't no management like micromanagement, I decided to go to all the maintenance stand-up meetings in the morning, and I would go to the shift changes, and I would just make sure that they were doing what they said they would do. Now, I don't know who was more surprised, me or the NCO in charge of maintenance who was running those meetings, to actually see one of us in his meeting. Now, for me, it was a real education with regard to how hard it was to have work span across a shift. I'd never had to deal with that before, right? I was an army of one. I would just do my work. I'd work till it's done. I never had to explain it to somebody else, and I was good to go. But here you'd have to hit the middle of the shift. It didn't go like it was supposed to go. You got to turn around, hand it off to somebody else, and they've got to get it done for you. Now, at the same time, while he's explaining to me all the specialists that have to get together in order to change these configurations, I'm talking to him about how what we're learning is changing the plan. As, like I said, these are very immature systems. So we're exchanging at that point. I'm understanding what kind of constraints he's operating under, and the kind of constraints that I have as well. It's that kind of interaction that I think was key to at least some degree of mutual professional respect. I don't think he would admit to that, but that's what I felt. Now, looking around the room, right, for the leadership here, this isn't the kind of thing where you do whatever you can to foster that mutual professional respect. Because I'll tell you, it's do everything you can do as a leader to foster that mutual respect, that understanding. It's that key. Because that disrespect element is an absolute poison in your organization, and it will tear you down. You will never be a high-performing team if that's what you're going after. Okay. Now let's talk for a minute about a key component. Let's talk about integrity for a minute. Okay. Now let me give you a little bit of the history on that quote. Okay. What you see there is Gus Grissom sitting outside Liberty Bell 7. Now that was the second launch of the Mercury program. It flew, landed as planned in the water, but unexpectedly, an emergency mechanism fired and blew the hatch off the capsule. The capsule started to fill with water, and it sank. It almost took Grissom down with it. Now, when they were asking him, what happened? Legend has it, Grissom said, the hatch just blew. Okay, now I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not a real good student of history. And I understand that there's a fair amount of data that indicates that he did not blow the hatch. But unfortunately, that's the phrase we all use when we screw up. The hatch just blew. So sorry, Gus. Let me give you a modern day example of what I'm talking about here. We were early in a test program, new aircraft, so we didn't know a lot about the aircraft yet. We were learning. Pilots are learning as well. And I have a brand new pilot out at the end of the runway in the aircraft, goes through extensive checks at the end of the runway. So he throttles up and he starts to move. Now I say he starts to move as opposed to he starts to roll, because the aircraft starts moving down the runway and smoke starts pouring out of the wheels, right? They're not turning. So we start yelling and pointing, flagging them, and we get it stopped. And then we tug that aircraft back, right? But as we're towing the aircraft back, the wheels are rolling now. Now the pilot swears he released the parking brake. So you all say it with me. The hatch just blew. Right, no problem. Okay, so the hatch just blew. Right. Well, you remember Skippy, tech director? Yeah, he was on us like a sweat. So he had us pull apart the entire hydraulic system, chasing after this ghost problem. Hey, Skippy knew what was going on, and he was just making a point. Now, what can you expect? What should you expect from operations? You should expect ironclad integrity. Okay, we should tell you what happened, no matter what, even if it makes us look bad. We've got to give you the straight truth. Otherwise, we're all going to waste a lot of time. Now, let's not get carried away. Like, don't underestimate our ability to protect our fragile egos while we're telling you the absolute truth. Okay. Let me give you another example. Okay. Again, I'm in a bit of a jam. My job here is to put laser-guided bombs on the F-16. Okay? I don't have a lot of time, and I don't have a lot of money. Laser-guided bombs are very expensive, and I only have money for a handful of these to go check out and make sure that they're integrated correctly into the F-16. Okay? So in the middle of this, the operations officer injects a pilot into my program. This guy, Link, is our most experienced laser-guided bomb drop-in test pilot. Okay, we all kind of hoped that maybe we would get a crack at it, but Link is going to be our guy. So that morning, load up the jet. We all head out to the precision impact range. We're out there. We're going to watch. We have electronic scoring. It's going to be great. So Link rolls in on that first run. Bomb comes off. Thud. Unscorable. It did not even make it to the target range. We can't even score how bad this bomb is. And my heart sank. I thought, oh, crap. This isn't going to happen. I don't have that kind of money. You know, this was supposed to be pretty straightforward. And then right as I'm thinking this, Link says, all right, I'm coming around again. I said, well, hang on a second. I radio back. I go, negative. let's knock this off. Once you come on home, we got to take a look at this data, figure out what happened. And Link goes, oh, negative. I'm going to keep going. And now, well, we don't have codes we use, or maybe it was a tone of voice that I really picked up on, and I said, okay, Link, let's see it. So he comes around again, and yeah, bomb comes straight down, shack, hits the center of the target. He goes around again, shack, hits the target again, hits the target again. And I think I'm driving back to the debrief, and I go, this ought to be pretty good. I can't wait to hear this. Okay, now let me explain something to you here, because it gets to be important in a minute. Okay, so this is the stick in an F-16. Okay, up front here, where that trigger mechanism is, what that does is when you pull that, it fires the laser on that target. You hold the laser on that target, and then you hit the weapon release button right up there. That's the pickle button. Off comes the bomb. You pickle the bomb. Okay? So remember that in a minute, because I get back to debrief, and then Link says, my brain told my hand to squeeze my index finger, and my hand told my thumb to push the pickle button. Okay, so that's pretty amazing, right? I mean, holy smokes. Like, how could you blame him? It was that stupid hand. Okay. Now, but at least we knew we weren't dealing with a software problem, right? We knew exactly what the problem was, and we could move on with life. Now, integrity, though, isn't the sole domain of aviators. It's something that we would expect from maintenance as well. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about on that. Now, test jets, we always like to know exactly where they are, measure exactly where they are. And we do that with a pod that looks a lot like a missile. We slide it on a rail, and it telemeters down, it beams down its position to us so we can watch it in the control room. So my buddies are out there flying one day. I'm the guy in the control room. And I look over, and I notice that one of the jets is gone. So I radio out, and I say, hey, Snap, I need you to cycle your ARTS pod for me because you're not reporting. Snap radios back and says, hey, I know exactly why I'm not reporting. It's gone. So he looked out, and there's some wires trailing out the underside of the wing, and that pod is long gone. I said, okay, that's not supposed to happen. Why don't we come on back, and let's figure out what happened. So he comes back, he lands, and I'm walking out to the ramp, and I'm met there by the weapons load chief who loaded the jet. He looks me right in the eye, and he says, I didn't hear it click. I slid it down the rail. I was in a hurry to turn a jet, and I didn't hear it click. It didn't lock in place. That's why it flew off. Okay. And there was Skippy. He was about 10 steps behind me, closing fast. That's exactly what we discovered. Skippy went over to the jet. We looked at some of the scratches it made as it came off. Yeah, it's pretty clear. It wasn't locked. That's how it came off. And looking at that guy, I knew that was never going to happen again. And Skippy just left, walked off, and we were back in business. Okay, so hey, look, that degree of integrity is the ante that you should expect. You pay it, everyone pays it. That's what it takes to be in the game. Okay. There you go. This is not a shameless book plug. All right. Now, believe it or not, I do read, okay? But I'll tell you right now, this book, too many big words, not enough pictures. Okay. All right. So, all right. But in looking at this book, there was a point that I noticed that resonated with me. Okay. The point was that operators frequently are the ones that are going to pick up on the fact that something is getting ready to fail or something is starting to degrade. You know, maybe it's not part of whatever measurement system you have, but there's a sensor in that aircraft and in the pilot. They do it every day, and so they're going to pick up on that soon. And getting that back into the system, getting you guys to be able to pick up that feedback is important. Now, unfortunately, there's a key assumption in that premise, and that is that we give you feedback that is constructive and helpful. Okay, so let's take a look at some feedback. All right. Now, as you're reading these examples of good feedback, just throw something out there for you. They estimate that the cost of a test pilot school education is roughly $1 million. So you're thinking for $1 million. I'm thinking Bluto could have done better than the aircraft handles funny. Come on, throw me something here. Say, hey, look, the Dutch roll is insufficiently damped to prevent a pilot-induced oscillation in a precision landing task. How's that, right? Hey, still got it. Okay, but let's take a look at what happens when that high-priced education comes in contact with the School of Hard Knocks over in the maintenance shop. Okay. Fly right and be serious. That's my favorite. All right, so those aren't originals. I got those off the web like everybody else does. All right. Yes, I have heard all the pilot jokes too. Okay. All right. Anyway, so clearly, though, the feedback is important, and we owe that to you in a constructive and helpful manner. All right. Okay. So let me wrap this thing up. Now I have given you a glimpse into the inner sanctum. Okay, so you are now all hereby sworn to secrecy, okay? I did not use anybody's real name. I still certify that there was 10% real truth in all the stories that I gave you. All right, but all kidding aside, hopefully I gave you a couple of key themes that I always see, okay? I always see that aspect of who do you work for, okay? This who works for who is a dead end in your organization. I would skip it. I would figure out who that guy is, and I would make sure that's clear to everybody. Okay, we also talked about mutual professional respect and how important that is. Okay, that is a poison in the organization. I can't make that point strong enough. Okay, then finally, that integrity and how important that is. That is the ante. That is the minimum. If you can't get somebody to give you that degree of integrity, you probably need to find another home for them. Okay. And then last but not least, hopefully you picked up on the fact that maintenance and reliabilities books make great stocking stuffers. So feel free, I know I do, to hand those out. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much for having me. You guys have been a great audience. You guys, thank you for the hospitality here. It's been fantastic. Thank you to the crew from Arnold for putting me up to this and coming up with that awesome title. All right. Thank you guys very much.
And for the